In 1759 on Mauritius Island, the body of a slave falls in the sea. As she drowns to death, she prays for her husband, Massamba, never to give up and save their people. The next day, a group of slaves, including Massamba, continue to work on a plantation that belongs to Eugene. There are only 2 weeks left of harvest, so Eugene asks Massamba to keep an eye on things and make sure nobody is slacking off. He also calls him Cicero instead of his real name. This causes another slave to see him as a traitor. That night, Massamba teaches his daughter Madi more reading and writing. Madi interrupts the lesson to share that her friend Ruba showed her a path on the southwest that should take them to Fiboumi, a village where all runaway slaves hide. She wants to run away, but Massamba forbids it, saying that Fiboumi is just a myth. The potential danger gets more obvious when they see a guard capturing a slave outside. The following morning, Eugene and his guards catch another slave who tried to escape. Since this was her first try, they burn her back to mark her with a lily flower. If she ever tries again, her ears and tendons will be cut off. Massamba has to translate this warning for the other slaves while a man loses his ears because he was caught a second time. Eugene then asks Massamba to remind everyone that a third escape attempt is punished with death. In the middle of the night, Massamba finds Madi having a panic attack after one of the guards abused her. He hugs her tightly and guides her through it with prayers until she calms down. Afterward, Madi insists they should kill all their masters and run, pointing out that the other slaves will follow him as a leader. Massamba still refuses and calls Madi Colette, which she hates. Madi doesn't want to lose her culture, but Massamba prioritizes her future and hopes that by making her fit in with the colonizers, she may get a job as a seamstress far away from the plantation. Sometime later, Massamba is called to the main house where Eugene is having dinner with some very important people. The governor knows that Massamba can speak both languages and wants him to help him understand the slaves. He asks if black people should be freed, but since Massamba is scared, he answers that black people exist only to serve. When he looks up to speak, the governor is offended and Eugene immediately kicks Massamba out. Eugene's son Honoré explains he was the one to train Massamba because he grew up here in the plantation and quickly understood that some slaves were trying to rise. Teaching Massamba convinced him that black people are also human. The governor brings up Madame La Victoire, a woman who hunts down runaway slaves and has the opposite views. An argument ensues over the treatment of slaves and Eugene has to silence Honoré to avoid trouble. However, the governor now thinks Eugene doesn't rule this area well. After the governor leaves, Eugene slaps Honoré for spewing his troublesome views. Then he calls Massamba to announce he's losing all his privileges. He'll cut cane like the others and he won't live with his daughter anymore. Madi will stay under Eugene's roof, and if Massamba tries to protest, he'll kill her. When Madi hears about this, she tries to self-delete, but Massamba stops her and sends her to the house. Seconds later, Massamba hears the dogs barking and lots of screaming. He immediately runs out and finds a guard on fire, but no Madi in sight. The other guards tell him that Madi ran away before sending him back to his room. The next morning, the guards tell Eugene that they couldn't find Madi. Eugene asks them to call Madame La Victoire before telling Honoré to join the hunt. To fix the family's reputation, Honoré is forced to agree, but also asks his father to treat Madi better when he brings her back. Afterward, Massamba is tied to the ground and whipped for several minutes to make him talk, but he has no idea where Madi went. At that moment, Madame La Victoire arrives with her sons Joseph and Baptiste. She turns down Eugene's money and asks for the details of Madi's escape. Victoire tries interrogating Massamba, explaining that she'll bring Madi alive because she believes in punishment, but Massamba continues to swear he knows nothing. Then they bring Madi's friend Ruba, and since she's pregnant, they dig a hole in the ground for her belly before tying her up. They only need to whip her feet once before she tells them Madi went looking for the Fiboumi village. Victoire has heard of the legend before and immediately leaves with her sons and Honoré to start the search. Using Madi's clothes, a dog follows her smell through the forest until Victoire finds marks on the ground that indicate Madi met someone and left with them. A few hours later, the group notices there are no more traces to follow, but they can see a hill in the distance. They decide to get to the top and watch for a while to see if anyone will come out of hiding. Back at the plantation, Massamba has been locked up in a tiny cell with a chain mask around his head. He begs Ruba for help, but she ignores him. When everyone is done working, Ruba throws food at the dogs to keep them quiet. Later that night, Ruba carefully sneaks around and frees Massamba from the cell before rushing back to her room. With the dogs asleep, Massamba manages to run through the field without being detected. The next morning, Victoire's sons think Madi is gone and they're wasting time, but Victoire thinks they need to be patient. Meanwhile, Massamba has reached the forest and stops by the river to drink, which is hard because of the mask. After hitting the lock for several minutes with a rock, he manages to break it and take the mask off, using branches to create shadows. Under the bright sun, he can find the right direction to continue the search for his daughter. That night, Victoire scolds Honoré for eating without manners like a black savage and forces all the boys to pray. She explains God has always been her guide and saved her in the darkest times. Honoré has already heard her story. He knows she was abused as a child, forced into an unwanted marriage as a teenager, and the first woman on the island to be divorced. He thinks she's the only person on the island who knows the horrors the slaves go through and should be sympathetic, but Victoire insists that the church has proven that black people have no souls. She doesn't think it's her place to question the church, yet Honoré can tell she has doubts. During the night, Massamba dreams that his wife is by his side. The following day, Massamba starts going up the hill and is seen by Victoire. When he starts wandering among the trees, he hears a noise and finds a black man named Kabedi who guides him around. There's also a black woman with a baby, and together they all hide from Victorie's group because they've entered the woods to look for them. At that moment, the baby starts crying and Baptiste hears them. So the slaves have to start running as fast as possible. Unfortunately, they can't go far, so Kabedi makes the mother hide and gives Massamba one of his blades. When Baptiste gets close enough, he opens fire, but the slaves dodge it and Massamba manages to tackle him to the ground. Baptiste fights back as Massamba tries to hit him to knock him out. However, Massamba freezes when suddenly Honoré calls his name and asks him to surrender. Kabedi then appears behind Honoré and quickly kills him by slashing his neck. After asking Massamba to do the same, Kabedi runs to hide. Massamba stares at Baptiste, but he can't bring himself to do it, so he runs away too, with Joseph now running after him. Massamba moves as quickly as possible until he's suddenly tackled by a black man named Rado, who helps him find a place to hide. Once Joseph leaves, the men keep going and Rado explains he's looking for the Fiboumi village. They stop at a cave where Rado shares the little food he has plus a fresh shirt. While telling the story behind his uniform he used to fight for France, and they even made him a citizen. However, when he came to this island, they burned his freedom papers and tried to force him into slavery. Meanwhile, Victoire is taking care of Honor's body. Baptiste points out that the slaves spared him like a good Christian would have, and that wording isn't received well by his family. Victoire spends most of the night praying. In the morning, she announces the Lord is protecting them, so they must continue the hunt. However, Baptiste refuses to go after the man who spared his life, so instead he'll take Honoré back to his father. A furious Joseph jumps on his brother, and they start fighting on the ground while Victoire stares without doing anything. After a few minutes of wrestling, Baptiste manages to defeat his brother and leaves the forest with Honor's body. Moments later, Massamba is on the move again, following tracks on the ground and plans to find his daughter. When Rado tries to leave the cave too, Joseph shoots his leg to bring him down. Then Joseph squeezes the wound while he and Victoire ask him about Madi and Massamba. Rado refuses to talk and says this island belongs to black people, so Victoire shoots him in the head. The duo searches the cave and finds Massamba's old shirt, so now the dog can follow his smell. In just a few minutes, the dog finds Massamba crossing the river and jumps to attack him, unaware there's a waterfall behind them. They both fall into the lake below, and Massamba tries swimming as fast as he can, but the dog easily catches up to him and bites his arm. As he screams in pain, Massamba pushes the dog off and grabs a rock to smash the beast's head to death. On top of the waterfall, Joseph and Victoire see Massamba escape into the woods. For the next few hours, Massamba continues to wander around the forest while following any track he can find. Eventually, he has to stop and rest because he's losing too much blood. Victoire and Joseph are still searching under the rain and get the clue they need when they notice some blood on a tree. That night, Massamba dreams about his wife again and gets encouraging words from her, receiving her blessing and a promise of guidance. The following day, Massamba makes it to the beach and finds a bunch of dead slaves on the sand and in the water. There's also a destroyed boat, which means the storm stopped them from escaping to Madagascar. Massamba checks every body on the shore, but he can't find Madi, so he goes back into the woods. He follows a strange noise and finds a few survivors, so he asks them about Madi before collapsing in pain and tears. The men help him up and take him to a cave near the beach where the women are hiding. Here he finally finds Madi and runs to hug her, but there isn't much of a reaction from her. Massamba then announces he'll help her find Fiboumi, which makes Madi smile and finally hug him back. After Massamba and Madi leave together, Victoire and Joseph also make it to the beach and find all the bodies. They follow Massamba's footprints on the sand to continue their hunt, forcing Madi and Massamba into hiding. Madi says she's tired of hiding, and Massamba agrees it's time to make a plan. That night, Massamba does a traditional ritual to renew his promise to his wife and asks for courage to fight his enemies. As the moonlight moves around him, Massamba hears his wife's voice saying they're now one before it starts to rain. Meanwhile, Victoire and Joseph are camping for the night. Victoire hears a noise and pushes Joseph down right before a blade attacks in the darkness. Mother and son immediately grab their weapons and stumble around blindly as they try to find the source of the attack. Suddenly, Joseph hears a noise and opens fire, giving away his position for Massamba to quickly slash him with a blade before hiding again. Victoire runs to her son and notices he's in unbearable pain, so she stabs him to end his suffering. Afterwards, she hides behind a tree only to come out again when she sees Massamba standing nearby. With the lightning serving as cover, Victoire sneaks around until she surprises Massamba from behind, shooting him in the shoulder. Then she grabs her knife to kill him, but when she looks up again, he's gone. A terrified Victoire starts praying until Massamba appears behind her and stabs her to death. That night, Massamba dreams of his wife appearing before Eugene and killing him with a spear. In the morning, Madi has to wake her father out of his trance and help him walk because of his injuries. However, Massamba is too dizzy and soon collapses again. Madi falls to her knees as she has a breakdown and yells for help. This gets the attention of a bunch of slaves who are also looking for Fiboumi and recently escaped Eugene's plantation. Madi joins the group and the men help her carry Massamba as they continue their search. After several hours of wandering through the woods, they finally find the mythical village near the hills. A healer immediately makes an ointment and applies it on all of Massamba's wounds while praying. This helps Massamba heal and move without pain again. That night, the locals welcome Massamba and Madi into their community and comment on some of the differences in their cultures, since many of these slaves were born on this island and not in Africa. Massamba shares stories about his original tribe and how his wife was killed in a colonizer's ship because she refused to be a slave. Madi also mentions some of the stories her mother used to tell her and how she found the strength to smile at her daughter before her death. The next day, while she's bathing in the lake, Madi sees her mother watching her from afar. In the evening, the villagers see flames in the distance, which means hunters are coming after them. Everyone starts running as the white men open fire and manage to recapture a few of the slaves. They cross a huge field but sadly find their way blocked by a cliff, which allows the colonizers to surround them, using a slave as translator. A man asks them to surround them and explains the governor has promised to spare them. Massamba says he wants a life with no chains and no masters, inspiring Madi to start singing a traditional song. The villagers sing along before they delete themselves, choosing the end over slavery.